Okay, guys, we're going to get started here in a second. And again, if you could kind of squeeze in a little bit. You have somebody sitting next to you, sir? I was just going to laugh because you had your arm around her. She's not there. Anyway, so yeah, we're going to get started here. And let's see. Okay. Wow, standing room only, huh, guys? You care about your liberty, don't you? Huh? Yeah, we were chit-chatting a little bit, and when you stop and think about it, if you lose your liberty, nothing matters. If they take your rights, nothing matters. The bottom line is our liberty, isn't it? And so what we're going to do here, how many people believe that you have inalienable rights? Raise your hand. And what does that mean exactly? Where do those rights come from? Okay. So if your rights come from God and you don't believe in God, how can you have inalienable rights? And if your rights come from man, then man can take your rights, can't he? But if your rights come from God, only God can take them. I'm going to bring Howard Covington up here. We're going to start this off with a prayer.
If you could take off your hats, please. Thank you all for being here. Let's pray. Father God, we do so thank you for this nation called the United States of America. We thank you for the founders that had the wisdom to put together a Constitution and a Bill of Rights that included the Second Amendment. We thank you for the sacrifice of veterans past and present who helped to keep those rights. We thank you for those participating behind me on the stage. We just ask that you give them your wisdom to answer our questions. And may this event provide all in attendance an opportunity to be more educated, especially with gun laws. And we thank you for all of you for coming, and we pray these things in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Something that we ought to do, I think. Don't laugh at me. Maybe we ought to shut off our cell phones, huh? Put it on vibrate or something. Look at that. That's a relic, ain't it? That's me. Terry Technology. Okay. Could all the veterans please stand? Give him a hand. Give him a hand. All right. Dan Scoville. Come on up here, buddy. Keep standing, guys and gals. There you go, sir.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all.
Okay. Thanks, Dan. And now let's do one quick thing here. Let's have a moment of friendliness. Say hi to one another. Yeah. It's a moment of friendliness. Come here. Be friendly. Be friendly. You guys are friendly. Yeah. All right. I'd like to bring up Trish Clark. She has an announcement, and this facility has been great. The folks who have allowed us to use this. She's going to tell you a bit about that. Here's Trish.
Thank you for coming and welcome to our great facility here. I am Trish Clark, and I'm president of the Anderson Area Association of Senior Citizens Organizations, which is the owner of the Frontier Senior Center. So the payments you're paying is I get a 1-minute commercial. This facility is a little different than most senior centers. It's not operated or funded by any state, county, federal funding. It's operated simply by seniors, owned out by them, and we make our own money. I wanted everybody to know that because we decided as a board to allow you to use this facility today without paying rent, because I believe it's an important issue for our community. In exchange for that, I want you to know it is available for rent. We'd love to have your weddings and your retirement parties and your birthday parties and all those things here. That helps to pay for this facility because we don't charge the seniors for anything. Everything is by donation, and we make the money through fundraisers and donations. So we'd ask you, if you feel like donating, we'd appreciate that. Come to our breakfast on the first Sunday of the month. That helps pay the bills. And use our ETC thrift store over on East Center Street, because that also pays the bills for the Frontier Senior Center. Thank you for coming, and have a great meeting.
Thank you, Trish. Okay. So what we're going to do here, without further ado, is we're going to start with introducing the folks up here on the panel. Mark Baird, State of Jefferson. Sam Paredes, Gun Owners of California. Roy Griffith, Californian Rifle and Pistol Association. Dan Reed, he's a lobbyist, but we won't hold that against him, because it's for the National Rifle Association. Greg Cohen. Yeah. Y'all know who he is. He's the district attorney of Tehama County. Yeah. Well, you're the most popular district attorney I've ever met. You can get applauses. Constitutional Sheriff Dave Hencraft. And Shasta County, Tom Basinko. We're going to kick this off with our first speaker, and that will be... Oh, yes, we can. There's a news flash. We are introducing the ROTC. Okay, gentlemen. They just told Joe about that, so we won't blame it on him, okay? Okay. And now... No?
Carry.
Oh, great.
Colors. Ready? Forward. Forward.
Watch the band. Watch the band.
Face. Colors. Carry. Colors. Ready. Cut. Right. Face. Forward. March. So. Colors. Halt. Colors. Fall.
Testing. Luke, I am your father. First of all, folks, did you get goosebumps? Every single time I see something like that, I just well up with pride for our cadets, for our veterans, for everybody who is fighting in country to protect and defend our rights. We're all warriors, and we're all warriors for freedom. And let me tell you, it is wonderful to be able to come up here to free California from Sacramento and environs, to come up here and share with you what's going on with your gun rights. Now, we happen to live in a freer part of the Sacramento area there. Roy and I happen to live with under a sheriff called John DiAgostini, another constitutional sheriff who's given out CCWs on an amazing basis. And I want to take just a second to introduce to you two of my colleagues. And Terry, you mentioned that Dan is a lobbyist. So am I. And so is Roy. And we represent gun owners of California. Roy represents the California Rifle and Pistol Association, and Dan Reed carries and represents the National Rifle Association here in California. So we run around the halls of the legislature defending and protecting your rights and giving those knuckleheads, legislators, the truth. We tell them the truth. We talk about our inalienable rights. We talk about the Constitution, and we talk about how silly a lot of their laws are that they're considering and proposing and passing. And our job is to be your representatives. It's as if you were there. And if you were to listen to some of these hearings, you would say, hey, we took the words right out of your mouth. And we work very hard. And we don't do this because we're your typical lobbyists who hope someday to get rich lobbying. We do this because it's a calling. We believe deeply, our families believe deeply in the Second Amendment, and that's why we have dedicated our lives to fight for that, for our families, for their families to come, and for you. So it's a pleasure to be here. I want to introduce Roy Griffith. He represents the California Rifle and Pistol Association. This guy's got more than 2 decades in law enforcement, both as a police officer in Arcata and as a fish and game warden. And he's just a great addition to our fight to protect our Second Amendment rights. Comes with tons of knowledge and experience on the hunting side. And we know that hunting is not about the Second Amendment, but it is something that we get to enjoy and we're going to enjoy. And it brings a lot of expertise to it. And California Rifle and Pistol Association is the state affiliate organization of the National Rifle Association. So when you hear CRPA, that's what we're talking about. It is the state affiliate to the NRA. Dan Reed has been my friend for a long, long time, and he started out as, when I first met him, he was an intern for the National Rifle Association at their office in Sacramento. He has since grown up. He's graduated from UCLA with a degree which led him to McGeorge to become a lawyer. Now we think lawyers, oh goodness gracious. This is a lawyer on our side. This is a guy who understands the Constitution and is willing to, instead of practicing law, defending your rights and my rights as a representative to the National Rifle Association here in the state of California. He represents 5 other states, but as you can imagine, California takes up the vast majority of his time. In some of his states, the arguments in the legislature are, well, what are we going to do to sponsor a bill to expand gun rights or to reclaim them? And he gets the pleasure of dealing with that. And then he comes to California, and of course, as you all know, and the reason that you're here, there are huge efforts to curtail our gun rights. I'm Sam Paredes. I recognize a lot of my friends that I've met here. I've been coming up here for, I don't know, almost a decade, it seems like, and sharing with you information on what's going on with your gun rights, typically at Tea Party meetings on Mondays at the church on Bonnie Hill, Bonneview. And I'll be coming up in 2 weeks to give a more detailed presentation. If you'd like to come, that would be a wonderful thing. I'd love to see you there, along with people who think just like you do. If you're not a member of the Patriots, and that would be a really good thing. But I'm Executive Director of Gun Owners of California. I've been doing this job since I was in kindergarten, and so 31 years that I've been doing it. I've been doing it for 31 years, and again, it's a calling, it's a passion. And it's a passion because we get to meet people like you, and we see the desire for freedom in your eyes, and we see the tears that well up when our colors come before us. And when you hear what it is that the legislature and the Congress in the past has wanted to do to us. And that's why we fight. You give us the energy. Now, our organizations, believe it or not, we're not supported by the industry. We don't get money from anybody to do grants or government grants or anything like that. We work solely through the support of people like yourself all over the state of California. People who say, you know, it's worth it to me to spend the cost of a box of ammunition, $25 or $35 a year, to support those people who are day in and day out fighting for my rights before the state legislature. And that's what we do. And thankfully, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of people just like you who want to be engaged. Now, we got our butts kicked this year in the previous election on Prop 63, as you well know, and we will be answering questions on all of the issues having to do with Prop 63 and Gunmageddon, the package of 7 bills that were passed by the legislature and signed by the governor. We're here to answer those questions, and if for some reason, and I don't see the situation where we won't be able to answer anything, but if there's some other question that you can't get to during the course of this meeting, catch us before we leave. I've got business cards out there on the table. If you want to take one, you can text me, email me, or call me on my cell phone in order to ask your questions. We need to be armed and informed. That's what we need to do if we want to protect our freedoms. I also have a couple of other things out there for you. We have brochures on Gun Owners of California. We are the oldest pro-gun political action committee in the country. We started in 1975 under the leadership of Senator H.L. Richardson. Of course, the National Rifle Association is the big Mac Daddy of them all, and we all need to be NRA members. I'm glad to see a lot of the NRA hats out there, and if you're not a member of any organization and you can only join one, it's got to be the NRA. And I'm saying that knowing that you might not be able to support us because you're supporting the NRA. Still, we all have to be members of the National Rifle Association. People have to understand that the NRA stood up for us in a very big way this election year. They spent over $25 million to elect a president who has promised to appoint people to the United States Supreme Court that are going to defend the Second Amendment and read the Constitution the way it was meant to be read. I also have a flyer on the firearms laws, what's new in 2017. If you want a little more brief information on what it is, golly, there was no way I would predict that there were going to be this many people. So if you're a couple, just take one. And if you need more, you can go to any of our websites, gunownersca.com, crpa.org, or nra.org, and get information on everything that's going on here in the state of California with more detail. But this stuff is available to you. We are very much looking forward to answering your questions. And just remember this, if you have a question, you're probably not the only one out there. Now, because we're limited on time and there are so many people, we're going to ask that you keep your commentary and positions, ask questions, because that's what we drove up here on a Saturday to be with you, to be able to answer those questions. We know you're all pro-gun. We know you all support the Second Amendment. We know that you all support the Constitution, and we know that many of you made an oath to protect the Constitution. We've got 2 sheriffs here that make up the leadership of the pro-Second Amendment movement within the California State Sheriff's Association. Sheriff Hankrat and Sheriff Basenko have been leaders in that effort. They have helped us to organize all of the other sheriffs and sometimes giving them a little bit of a backbone to be able to say, hey, I'm publicly supporting the Second Amendment, and that's a very good thing. So our thanks go to these sheriffs, and with great appreciation. I don't... our good district attorney here. I wish we had 57 more just like him. We would be a far better place. So without further ado, let's get to the questioning here right after you hear from my good friend Mark. Hang on.
So ladies and gentlemen, right now I'd like to introduce to you Mark Baird.
I apologize for the notes. I write them, I hardly ever use them, but I'm going to try to use them this time because there are a lot of important things to say, so I have to wear my glasses to read the notes. First of all, I just want to say something. I am not armed because I'm free. I am not. I am free because I'm armed. And Richard Henry Lee said in 1789 that to preserve liberty, the whole body of the people should always possess arms and be taught at a very young age how to use them. Now, the Bill of Rights was the codification of the inalienable rights that were given you by God, placed in your heart at the moment of your creation. And the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, when the Constitution was written, they had to decide whether to put this Charter of Rights in the Constitution. And this comes a lot from the 1689 English Charter of Rights. A lot of this comes from that. But most of it is thousands of years old. And we know that there's nothing new under the sun, right? The things that this government in California is trying to do have been tried again and again and again and again. And in fact, Adolf Hitler tried it in 1936. He said, why would we allow subject people to be armed? How can we conquer them if they have guns? Joe Stalin said, ideas are as dangerous as guns. We don't let people have guns, why would we let them have ideas? How are we doing in California? You have the inalienable right to defend self and family. See, the Second Amendment has always been considered a dual right. And that is first defense of self. And that was codified much earlier than 1789. It starts with Marcus Cicero. And he said that some laws are not written on paper anywhere. They're not laid down. They are derived from nature itself, among those being the right of a man to defend self without giving back to the wall. Do you know what that means? Without giving way. In other words, if you're presented with evil, why should you have to run? Why should a free people be required to retreat in the face of insufferable evil? And the answer is that's a rule that government instituted, not a natural law. William Blackstone called these the absolute rights. Those are the rights you have because you were born a free individual. God being the ultimate expression of freedom, the only free being in the entire universe, entirely free, perfectly free. And you were created in his image with those freedoms. And so with those freedoms, of course, comes responsibility, and we'll get to that in a minute, but you're perfectly free. And so with that freedom come the inalienable rights, the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, or what John Locke said, life, liberty, and property. And then Samuel Adams added, together with the right to defend those as best we can. Because Blackstone said you have the absolute right to life, whether you participate in society or not. If you live in a hole in the ground, you have certain rights because you're alive and you're a free-thinking individual. You have the right to your life. Well, what good is your life if any bear, animal, stranger, or evil person can come and take it anytime they want, because you lack the means to defend yourself. Even a bear has a mechanism for defense, his teeth and his claws. You don't have those things. And if you're a 100-pound woman, you certainly don't have the ability to subdue a 6'5", 250-pound attacker, do you? So you have to have tools to defend your life. And you have to have tools to defend your property. And Blackstone said you have the right to defend property. Because what good would it do you in your hole in the ground, and you've gathered enough rocks to make fire and pound out some hides and make your clothes, if somebody came and stole the rocks every day, and you had no means to defend those rocks? Why bother gathering them? Why not just jump off the cliff? And you have the right to do those things because you are alive, and it is natural for anyone to defend their life and their property. And then we form associations, and Blackstone called that civil liberty. Our associations are society, and we participate in those voluntarily. In that association, we give government certain rights in order to protect the rights that we hold most dear, the inalienable rights. Because freedom is a funny thing, it can be messy. you don't have the freedom to go 100 miles an hour down the road because you may kill someone else that's using the freedom to only go 55. So you surrender some freedoms in order to gain liberty and protect that liberty. So what is liberty? It's freedom with responsibility. And I don't want to disparage any of the groups here. And if I say something, I don't mean that to disparage any of their efforts, because as Sam says, if you can only join one, join the NRA. If you can join them all, join them all. But I don't agree with everything the NRA says. And we'll get to that in a little bit, and we'll probably talk about that afterwards. And we need to educate the groups so that they can protect our liberties in the way that our money wants them to. All right, so how many of you trust a government that doesn't trust you? If the government doesn't trust you with weapons, why on earth would you trust a government that has the weapons that you're barred from having? In the Miller case in 1936 or 38, the government specifically said that the Second Amendment protects weapons that are military grade. Well, in the state of California, if a weapon looks like it could have been military because it has evil features, you know, black plastic, I guess if it's white plastic, it's not as evil, but if it's black plastic, you're in trouble. So why would you trust a government? How many of you trust a government that exempts itself from the laws that they impose upon you? The California legislature exempted itself from the show cause for CCW in 2011 or 2012. Members of the California legislature, when they apply for a CCW, do not have to show good cause, as many, fortunately not in this county or Siskiyou County, in my county. In my county, the sheriff will issue if you pass a background check. But it's still permission. And it bothers me to have to ask permission of the government to exercise a right that God gave me. That's not good. I like my sheriff, I work with him, but I don't like the idea that I have to ask government's permission to defend my life, my family, or my community. How many of you trust a government that says that things that you've owned for perhaps decades and used safely and lawfully are now illegal? Do you know what ex post facto means? Do you know what a bill of attainder is? That is a legislative act that targets a group of people because of what they're doing. If you exercise your Second Amendment right by owning an AR-15 or any semi-automatic centerfire rifle that has any evil features or is not on the California approved pistol roster, you are a group of people that defends the Second Amendment. You're being targeted by the legislature because they hate liberty, they hate the Second Amendment, and by the way, they hate you. And unfortunately, because your vote is irrelevant, you don't have enough representation to defend yourself legislatively, we're here talking about other ways that we can do it. The NRA argued in June of 2016 that states can ban open carry. They argued in front of the Ninth Circuit that states should be able to choose whether they honor open carry or concealed carry. And that was in the San Diego v. Peretta. And so, what are we asking ourselves? Does the Second Amendment, which guarantees you the right to keep and bear arms, and those rights shall not be infringed, does that come with a price tag? In other words, are we now in a position where our defender says that we have to ask the government's okay to do that? I say to you, no. Now, once again, I'm a member of the NRA. I support the NRA. But we need to educate some of our groups as to how we want this to occur, because I don't want limits on my liberty. I don't have limits on my liberty. I have a water rights group in Siskiyou County that I help form, and we have a motto: we will not submit. I am armed every day. I will never be disarmed as long as I'm breathing. I don't care what the government says, and I don't care what they do, because that is an inalienable right, and I don't ask anyone's permission to exercise it. How many of you know that the government uses something called the balanced interest to strip you of your liberty? In other words, what the government has to claim in court, according to the Ninth Circus in the state of California, I'm sorry, did I say circus? I meant circuit. According to the Ninth Circuit in the state of California, the government has a balanced interest when it comes to your liberty. Now, that's in direct violation of Supreme Court ruling or Supreme Court opinion in Heller versus DC. What the government says is, if we say it's for the public health and safety, then we have to determine whether a right is worth hanging on to. So the government is going to ask another government agency, and by the way, Edmund Koch said that all courts are corrupt because the judge knows who signs his paycheck, another government agency. And so here the government is asking the court, because we claim there's a public health and safety risk, we want you to determine whether the Second Amendment is a right that is worth hanging on to. Every time I say that, I cringe. There is no balanced interest when it comes to God-given rights unless something is happening here. And how many of you think that the government is trying to assume the role that God already has? If the government can say to you, that right is not worth having, and that is a right that was given you by your Creator, well, I just don't know. Who am I going to follow? Let me see. Kevin De Leon or God? That's a tough one. Give me a minute. So what is the legitimate role of government? In fact, what's the only role of government? To secure the rights of the people, to secure the rights of the governed. Where do they get their power? By consent of the governed. California Constitution, Article 2, Section 1 says government was instituted for the good of the people, and I'm paraphrasing. And it is their, and all just power derives from the people. And it is their right and their responsibility to alter or reform that government whenever the public good demands it. Is the Constitution our founding document, or isn't it? Actually, it's not. It's our second try. The preamble of the Constitution says, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union. We had a union before. We had the Articles of Confederation, and they didn't work. So in Constitutional Convention, representatives of the states, the authors of the contract, met and came up with a new form of government. In other words, the people altered or abolished the Articles of Confederation in favor of a government more suitable to their happiness and to their needs. That's the Constitution. The Anti-Federalists, led by Richard Lee and some other notables, Sam Adams and other people, said we need a Charter of Rights. The rest of the guys, the mainliners, said no, we don't, because if we outline a Charter of Rights, that will give government room to interrupt those rights. But the Anti-Federalists held on, and they managed to prevail. The Bill of Rights is not necessarily something that was included right from the beginning. It was a compromise to get the Anti-Federalists to shut up and vote for the Constitution. But it works because it outlined the rights that no one has the ability to take from you. No one has the ability to abridge. No one has the ability to interfere in. But here's the deal, folks. You don't get the government you deserve. You get the government you allow. And we have done this to ourselves. I'm not trying to escape responsibility here. I'm a big fan of personal responsibility. And this is our own fault because we didn't stand up right from the beginning and demand something that you know in your heart. The Constitution was not meant to protect you from all evil. The Constitution was meant to protect you from the good intentions of well-meaning tyrants. The Constitution is the line the government is not supposed to cross. The Bill of Rights doesn't bind people, it binds government. If that's true, why do we have over 20,000 gun laws? If that's the case, if people institute government to secure their liberty, why is that true? Because we have failed to pay attention. We have failed to show up when guys like Sam and his colleagues needed us in the state legislature. And when I mean show up, I mean 20, 30, 40, 50, 100,000 of us. So this is our fault. These guys are trying to help us, but they can't help us without us. We need to start showing up, and we need to start ponying up. And we need to let them know what we want and how we want it. That's how we can regain our liberty if we stick with California. There's another thing that Thomas Jefferson said, and then I'm going to go to court cases and tell you what the answer is. Thomas Jefferson said that of government afraid of its people is democracy. People afraid of government is tyranny. And here we are today. And there are a lot of court cases that define some of the things that I've spoken about, and I can prove everything I've said, so ask me questions. But one thing I want to get to last before I give you the answer is, how many people here think that police have a duty to protect you? I don't see very many hands, so most of you have probably heard this. They don't. In fact, there are Supreme Court cases to say that the government and law enforcement has no duty whatsoever to protect you from crime or violence or anything else for that matter. California Government Code, Section 821, Section 845, and 846 says that public employees will suffer no liability for failing to arrest a person or hold on to a person that they have arrested. That cities and municipalities are not required to even form police departments. That no public employee will suffer liability for failing to protect you, or for failing to act on an enactment or failing to act on an enactment. That's California Government Code, and there are many, many codes in many states that are much like that. And the case of Warren versus DC was the first case that showed that to be true. There were 3 women who lived in a condominium. A couple of guys kicked in the door. They did some horrible things to one of the girls while the other 2 were calling the police over a period of hours and hours and hours. Finally, the noise died down. The other 2 girls went downstairs. The attackers were still there. They took them to another apartment and spent the next 14 hours doing horrible things. Police had been called repeatedly. They'd even come to the house. But they, for some reason, failed to know that there was a crime in progress and failed to protect these 3 women. And the appellate court in DC found that the government has a general duty to protect society, but not an individual duty to protect you unless you have a special relationship. What constitutes a special relationship? You're in jail. If I, as a police officer, deprive you of your liberty, I now have the responsibility to protect you in a limited fashion, because government's duty is not to protect you unless they have deprived you of the means to protect yourselves. And that can happen in many ways, and there are a few court cases that are kind of gray on that, but generally speaking, government has no duty to protect you. Now, the police officer's code of ethics and code of standards, they try to protect you. They do the best they can. They're good men and women, and they're working hard, and they're putting themselves in harm's way for us. But they can't. But they can't be everywhere at once. In fact, in my county, we don't even have law enforcement in the county in large at certain times of the night. We have CHP, but no sheriff's department, because we can't afford it. And in this day and age, there are 500,000 cops in the United States, but there are 360 million people. They can't be everywhere. They can't protect you. It's not their job. Your job is to protect yourself and your family, but you need the means to do it. Now, here's the answer. California is going to strip you of your rights. I don't think there's any doubt about that. They're already well on their way. Pretty soon they'll ban semi-automatic weapons, maybe this year. Then they'll attack semi-automatic pistols, and pretty soon you'll be back to Iraq. The answer is the state of Jefferson. Because instead of chasing down 20,000 causes on 20,000 fronts with $20,000 million if we could get it together, and losing 90% of them because the courts don't respect our opinion and don't care what you think, and neither does the state, why not form a state that has liberty to begin with? How will the Second Amendment be handled in the state of Jefferson? Constitutional carry. That's it. That's easy. Now, here comes the responsibility part. If you make a mistake with your gun, we will lock you up and throw away the key. And it will be a felony, by the way. So in California, not so much anymore. In Jefferson, you will have the gun. You will have the weapon. You will have the right to protect yourself and defend yourself. Just don't mess it up, because there will be consequences for anyone who infringes on someone else's liberty with their weapon. And that's the way it ought to be. I want to thank you all for listening to me, and thank these gentlemen here, and we're open to your questions. Time has come for 51.
Wow. Okay, we're all gonna set the rules together. How's that sound? Okay. What we're going to do is, we were thinking about having people line up, but I guess Woody, or Bernie, you and I are gonna have to probably wander out there a little bit. Yeah, and I'll wander this side, you wander that side. What we're going to do is, how many people, first of all, want to ask questions? Raise your hand. Oh, quite a few of you, good. Okay, so we want to make sure your questions are answered. So is it fair to say that we don't want somebody just making statements? How many of you agree with that? Okay. And also, when you ask a question, think about it first. Think about what you want to ask. And the way we'll do this is you will pick whom you would like to ask your question of. Whom would you like to ask your question of? You'll direct the question to that particular gentleman. That gentleman will answer your question, or if he believes that the question is more suitable for someone else on the panel, then he'll defer it to someone else in the panel. There won't be rebuttals, there won't be a microphone going back and forth across the table for a round table discussion, because this is your meeting, right? Yeah. All right. So, with that, I just would like to say one thing. A reading of the Second Amendment wasn't giving the new government of the United States the power to grant the right to bear arms. The Second Amendment was to prevent the government from infringing on that right. Yeah? So we have all these laws. And something else too, these men all work hard. These guys work hard down at the Capitol. We donate money, yeah? Sam said that $25 million went to the NRA to get our president elected. That was our money we donated to try to prevent unconstitutional laws that shouldn't be there anyway. Then we have tax dollars that goes to the government to fight these guys with the money we give them. Does anybody else besides me see something a little bit paradoxical about that? Huh? So I think what we're going to do here, at this point, I'd like to introduce Joe, who is going to be moderating this. He's going to be facilitating up here. And then he'll turn Bernie and I loose. But here's Joe.
Hello, everybody. I just want to say something real quick because I'm standing up here and somebody gave me a mic. I don't want to get in the way. As I'm standing up here, I am unbelievably encouraged. I don't know if all of you sometimes feel overwhelmed with everything going on, but as I'm walking in here and I'm looking at all these faces who took the time to come in here, I'm just blown away. So also our panel up here who's taken the time to come in, they're just like us, right? They're just out here. So I think we all need to respect each other. I'm up here as part of a 3-person team to make sure 2 things happen. Your questions get answered and this moves along, right? So they're going to be out in the audience and they're going to be finding you, getting your questions going. I'll be up here as your representative to make sure it's moving along and the questions get answered. All right? All right, guys, let's get this thing started.
Go ahead, Bernie.
Got one right there.
Hi, thank you. So a question for Sheriff Bosenko. This is going to be about interposition, and it's for him because I live here. So as soon as these laws hit this year, I'm going to be a criminal like a lot of folks, even though I have done nothing whatsoever. So when the DOJ comes to my door and they ask to inspect my weapon or ask me why I have not registered it, I'm going to tell them I am a legal, lawful gun owner. All my weapons were lawfully possessed, lawfully purchased, and nobody from DOJ is going to be allowed into my home until either my sheriff or my undersheriff is present at that moment. So I don't expect an answer to this question. You may have not got this yet, but if and when that happens, I will be calling SHASCOM. I will be asking for my sheriff. The question is, I would like you to are you going to be willing to interpose? I will be calling SHASCOM, asking for my sheriff or my undersheriff to be present at the time. Thank you.
good question. And the only way that they can enter is by your consent or with a warrant. If they have a search warrant, that's a lawfully executed document through the courts. They could enter then. DOJ is part of the state of California. I don't have any authority of them, neither do any of the sheriffs. But if they have a lawful court order, the warrant, then that gives them the ability to come in there. Other than that, it's consent unless there's some exigent circumstances, but that gets into little blurs it. But basically consent or warrant, that's the only way they can get in.
Real quick, if you guys will just pass that mic down when you're ready for the question. And did that answer your question?
No.
That wasn't really a yes or a no, as far as my request is going to be that the sheriff or the undersheriff be present so that I have representation from my county sheriff at the time. That was really my question. Are they going to be, I'm going to ask for their presence. That's my question.
Yeah, so the question is, would you be present or be willing? Push it up twice.
So I'm not in town all the time, and neither are my undersheriff. If we could be there, yes. My deputies could be there as we could usually call it a civil standby to interpret that. But again, they're going to uphold the law. So if they say, do you have consent? No, can't enter. We have a search warrant, then they could. So again, we're here to enforce the law, not to make a decision like a court of law to interpret it. And that's what all law enforcement usually has, all that discretion. There's very few laws that mandate us to do something and to take particular action, at least in the criminal side.
Okay. Let's hold off on the comments until we have a mic. Go ahead.
Yeah, this goes to Greg Cohen. Recently in California, the several communistic cities have passed sanctuary laws protecting illegals in their city and county. If these laws are in fact legitimate, then why could we not declare Shasta and Tehama County sanctuary areas for the ownership of ARs and high-capacity magazines?
I appreciate your thought. I thought of that. It's novel, unique, and I think it's a great thought. And I think really the key is whether or not there will be the lawful ability of a municipality or a county to declare itself a sanctuary city. The issue is going to be, and you're aware of this, San Francisco, certain school districts are trying to create a sanctuary haven, whether it's a school district or a municipality. I personally don't think it'll be legal, it'll stand up, but I like your thought process.
Okay, my question, I think we're kind of all headed in the same direction, and this is directed towards both sheriffs and any legal representation that those counties have. The question is, since these laws have passed, for whatever reason, are you gentlemen going to enforce those unconstitutional laws? Yes or no? Simple question.
I'll take that. Thanks, Greg. Okay, so I've said this a lot of times in town hall meetings and constitutional sheriff's meetings and a lot of phone calls, emails, and I will use, and my philosophy in our county and with our folks is I will use any law on the books to target crooks. So in answer to your question, if we have a crook in our county and one of these laws applies, then we are going to use the law for the crook. Our folks have a lot of discretion, our law enforcement officers, when I say our folks, on how we enforce, like Tom said, certain laws. Some of these gun laws, if you really talk to the experts, the punishment for the laws is really nothing. Misdemeanor and infraction type stuff. Right now, we don't have time to enforce sufficiently misdemeanor and infractions, and the DA's office quite often doesn't have the time to prosecute the laws. So keep in mind that's my philosophy, and that's what we do in Tehama County. Is there a chance that Joe Citizen out here in the audience may get looped up in a crime by a deputy or officer who maybe is a little bad-shaped or doesn't know any better or is just trying to do the right thing, yeah, there's a chance. But we try very hard not to target citizens, and we stick to crooks. Is that?
There is a follow-up question to that we get asked a lot, and I'm not going to do this a lot, but this came up early. The question is, who determines crook? And isn't that a little bit of profiling that it ends up happening?
No, it's not profiling, and well, you could call it profiling because I've certainly profiled and targeted a lot of crooks in my career.
Right.
The crooks are the people who steal our property, batter our innocent citizens, abuse laws, try to hide behind laws. Sometimes they're addicts, sometimes they're just evil people. But in every jurisdiction, I don't care if it's Shasta, Tehama, Red Bluff, Anderson, Chicago, our law enforcement folks know the crooks. And, and that's the only way that we are going to ever keep those scales of justice level is to target the crooks. Now, if a crook wants to toe the line and be a law-abiding citizen, guess what? Heats off that person. So that's our mentality. That's been my mentality for 29 years now, and that's where we try and work in Tehama County.
And
This question,
basically the same for Shasta too. We have the discretion. That's the way it's going to be. How many? Don't raise your hands. I'm sure somebody's driven down the road at 80 miles an hour and been stopped. Has everybody gotten a ticket? Most of the time, yes or no. Could be no. That's the officer's discretion of whether they write a citation for that. But if the person's driving 80, they have a suspended license, the vehicle's not registered, they're going to take enforcement action for that.
because this question goes to either one or both sheriffs, maybe the DA. The money that most of us have spent for CCW goes to the county, I guess. You tell us. Fine, I see. Head no. All right. Tell us. Then tell us where spent and how much goes to each category, or if I use the right term. Thank you.
Who's that question for? Was that the sheriff or the sheriff's?
The majority of the money that goes to CCW goes to the state. We get a small amount for the fingerprinting charge and for charging and processing of the CCW fees. In Shasta County, it's by the time you take your class, which goes to the instructor, and then fingerprinting and processing, it ends up being about $350 for your first 2-year permit, and then when you renew, I believe here in Shasta, it's a total of $64. But you have the fingerprint fee, we get a small amount of that, and the majority of that goes to the state. And that's the way it is throughout the state for the sheriffs and or chiefs. The majority goes to the state for the CCW forms.
Yeah, this question either for Sam, Dan, or Roy. Proposition 8, perfect example of how the will of the people can be overturned. What action will be taken in the near future, hopefully, on Prop 63?
Sure, I'll go ahead and answer that. And first off, thank you guys for having us again. This is really encouraging to see after 2016. As Sam mentioned, I do work for National Rifle Association. I've worked in 5 other states, and I don't work in all those states anymore now that I have California. And it's really a privilege to work here in our home state with what we're facing. And I'm encouraged by the direction we're going to go after what happened last year. And we're taking an aggressive approach in the courts. Unfortunately, it's going to take a little bit of time to sue on those. We need to wait for the cases to be ripe. And I'm sure a lot of you have seen that we're starting to see regulations come forward. First, we saw regulations on large or standard capacity magazines that they like to dub high capacity magazines. We saw those posed as emergency regulations that were put out on the Friday before Christmas. And with emergency regulations, you have 5 days to comment. And that meant it was Christmas Eve, Christmas, Boxing Day, for those of you who enjoy that, the Tuesday, and then Wednesday, comments were due. That gave us 5 days over the holiday to evaluate this. And we filed a very stern letter, which ultimately caused DOJ to pull those emergency regulations. So we're still waiting on regulations on magazines. So we can't really take action on magazines yet. There's still a question on whether it's going to be the bill that passed or Prop 63. What we saw out of the regulations was it looked like the bill was going to be controlling versus the proposition. And that has a lot of people scratching their head as to whether the vote counts or whether the legislature counts. And so we're going to have those questions when it comes to ammunition as well, because obviously there was a legislative bill that impacted the way Prop 63 would go into place. So we have to wait for regulations there. Right now, we recently got, on the Friday before New Year's, we got assault weapon regulations. And those regulations are a little bit tricky. As part of the assault weapon bill, there was an exemption from the Administrative Procedures Act for registration. And what the Administrative Procedures Act is it's a procedure for allowing public comment and vetting of regulations. And what DOJ has done in this case is they've taken that small APA exemption, which applies specifically to registration, and they've rolled out the wish list. They went from a handful of definitions dealing with assault weapons to more than 44. They're trying to include different categories. It's going well beyond requiring photographs, et cetera. And so right now, those regulations are with the Office of Administrative Law, and they'll make the decision whether to send them over for publication. Right now, they haven't done anything on that. We recently submitted a letter, a very detailed letter, which you can see on nraila.org on one of our alerts, that details why this goes beyond the APA exemption. And this is a pre-litigation letter. So in the event that OAL goes forward, we're ready to sue. And so that's where we're at. So it takes time for the cases to get ripe. Otherwise, we just can't sue. We won't have standing, and we need to know the full breadth and scope of the law before we can take legal action.
My question is for District Attorney Cohen. Let's fast forward to 2017. The California Department of Justice is using DEROS lists to go to rounding up so-called assault weapons from persons who are not disqualified from the possession of firearms. My question is, does the California DOJ have the ability of furthering charges themselves, or must they refer them to the county district attorney for prosecution?
That's actually a great question. So within the world of prosecution, as you're aware, charges come to the seated county district attorney. The Attorney General does have the ability, under California law, to conduct their own prosecutions. And that's where I agree with your thinking. It can get very, very muddy. So I don't know the answer to that question specifically. My gut is telling me that they could choose to file with me, wait for the decline, and then the Attorney General in that instance could step in, perhaps, and file charges. So that would be my answer. That's really my gut in this situation. The Attorney General can come and prosecute it within the county of Tehama, if for instance, if they chose to do that.
So what we're facing essentially is a star chamber justice system.
Well, we're talking about a possibility, but again, look what happened in the last 10 years of California gun rights. I don't think any of us would believe that we would be where we are, especially after 2016. So I hate to say that's coming but I don't want to say it's not possible, because even though I'm not aware of many situations where the Attorney General has come into a county on a large-scale basis of a number of cases and come in and conducted the prosecutions, I am aware that the Attorney General has prosecuted cases within individual counties where the sitting district attorney has chosen not to. Environmental cases oftentimes.
Yeah,
You're welcome.
Good question. Bernie?
Yes, I direct this to one of the sheriffs. This is about the new ghost gun law they're going to pass. It's going to take effect in July 1st of 2018. I already have one of those, and if I have it serialized now, it's my discretion. I can pick whatever one I want on there as long as it meets all the regulations. I don't have to register that with that serial number. Will I have to register it anyways, or will I be legal even after July 1st, 2018?
I think unless Tom wants to field this. Okay.
Basically, I'll field it, but it's my understanding you'll still have to register it because even though you have a serial number, if you have it as an AW, unless it's a non-existent featureless gun as referred to, it would still have to be registered though. And I'll punt that down to the gun guys because you're living it.
Yeah, we're going to hold on that, guys.
Okay, so if it's a featureless, then I don't have to worry about registering it. But if I wanted to keep it as an assault weapon, then I would have to register it as an assault weapon. Thank you.
As I see it, what we're dealing with in the state of Sheriff Basenko and DA Cohen, I'm sorry. As I see it, there are two problems that we're dealing with. At one end, we have criminals who are being released, and we have crimes that are being downgraded, and at the other end, we have gun laws that are coming so that we cannot defend ourselves. These people who are being released are not like the people in this room. My question is, what can we do? Why are we sitting like a bunch of sheep, letting Sacramento run right over us?
That might have been a rhetorical question.
Somebody want to take that?
Did you guys want to take that?
Great question, and that's why we are all here. Our laws that we've seen over the last few years, Assembly Bill 109 that started with the releases in the prison system and impacting our communities every day, Prop 47 that we've seen, even more releases, and now Prop 57. Those were approved by the voters, not necessarily in our respective counties up here, but those have caused for more releases. And then it's very difficult for us, for our legislature, the more conservative legislators, to get laws passed for felony crimes or misdemeanor crimes that require jail time. It's just not working that way. And that's why it's so important for meetings like this, but even more important, to have your legislators like Brian Dolly, James Gallagher, Jim Nielsen, to be aware of what you are feeling and what you want to see, and most importantly of all, exercising your right to vote during voting time, to exercise that. That's so important, but you have to be engaged, and that's why you're all here.
Your side, Bernie.
Roy Griffith, there was a recent article that you guys released about the names supposedly being inadvertently released of all the firearms instructors in California. Can you comment on that? You said it was a developing story. It looks like it was inadvertently, and now the other story was it was intentional.
Yeah. I'll briefly say that is correct and true. Sam here can speak better on it because he is an actual victim of that violation. I've never heard that it was intentional, but it was not a hack. They tried to play it off as a hack initially. Is that correct? I'm going to pass it to Sam for...
You're absolutely correct. All certified firearms instructors with the state of California, there was a Freedom of Information or a Public Records Act request made by a radio station in Southern California that asked for the names of all of the instructors in the state of California. In the Department of Justice, all they had to do was provide the names, but instead they provided home addresses, business addresses, and driver's license numbers. I don't believe that that was done accidentally. I think I received a letter from the California Department of Justice saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, we're sorry, and we're gonna give you for free for a couple of years one of these identity protection programs that you can subscribe to for free to make sure that your identity is not misused by somebody else. And they said that they requested this station to return that information to them unused. And we haven't heard anything about it. Here's the sad thing. This thing happened at the beginning of October. They didn't inform anybody until more than 2 months after the breach was made. So any damage that might have happened. Now, there's no way we can control hacking of the information from the radio station. So who knows where that information has now been spread across the world, thanks to the internet. So the California Rifle and Pistol Association, in particular, Chuck Michelle and Associates, the top pro-gun attorney's office in the state of California, and actually represents the cases for NRA and CRPA. They're asking for anybody who has received one of those letters to communicate with them and let them know who you are. They're taking a look at our options as far as a class action suit is concerned, or what sort of a response. And if anybody's identity has been compromised, they've actually received compromising situation, you can bet your bottom dollar that we're going to unleash the hounds.
All right.
So that's the situation right now. Follow up?
Just one thing. This is a parting shot from your state attorney general. It is. Who is now going to be your...
Okay, all right, let's move on.
Yes, my question is quite simple. As constitutional sheriffs, Tom and your partner there, you have sworn to uphold the Constitution of the United States, and we understand what nullification means. So would it not be logical for a sheriff who is sworn to uphold the Constitution to nullify an unjust law?
Oh, good grief. I guess the best, we've had this asked before in the past 4 or 5 years, and we're also sworn to the California Constitution, and we are law enforcement officers, and so I guess my first answer to the question is it sounds good, but no. We have to represent all citizens in our counties, and we have to do it in the best way we can. Part of this, I appreciate, and maybe that's not the right word, but the movement here that, with you folks, Tea Party folks, that's been going on for I think 6 years now, 7 years maybe.
What is that? Can you clarify what you meant?
The educational process to citizens that I've become aware of since I've been a sheriff, this is my 7th year, I think that's where it's at. It's because we want to do the right thing for ourselves, our families, and our citizens, but we also have to remain credible. And if we lose credibility by saying we're going to nullify federal law, or nullify state laws that are what I deem unconstitutional from the federal side, I think I'm going to lose credibility. So hopefully that answered your question.
Let me ask a question or clarify that question a little bit. And were you referring to the Tea Party as the movement here? Was that what you were referring to?
Well, I use Tea Party, whatever movement. The reason I use Tea Party is because that movement, those individuals who, like I said, who first came across, from my knowledge, 7 years ago, have become so educated, and I call the Tea Party folks the educated people.
Okay.
Well, now, I'm not saying that nobody else is on that.
Yeah, and I think that would
mission.
reference. This is an educated group. I don't know that they're all Tea Party. So I think the underlying question here that we're all asking, that I'm hearing from people, is, as our last defense, do you have the power or authority to defend our rights from the state of California and what they're doing? Do you have that power and that control, and are you able to exercise it? I think that's the question that we're asking.
I think we do, but it would be a case-by-case basis.
Yeah,
So, yeah, I think we do.
Good.
To clarify, just to clarify, what he is saying in essence, which is the truth, in which you do have jurisdiction, which you can create interposition, and then you can have the nullification process. The Bill of Rights trumps everything, period. End of sentence. I think that's what Ross was trying to say. Okay, and that was the question he wanted to know. I mean, that just trumps it. There is no other answer. And I have a question for Mark Baird. I have a question about just what I said to Mark Baird.
The answer to that's no, because there is Supreme Court case law to say that a sheriff can't be compelled to enforce federal law, but there is no case law to say that a sheriff can't be compelled to enforce state law, for one. And for two, it's a great idea, but it wouldn't work, folks. Because even if the sheriff instructed every deputy in his command, do not enforce PC 26530 or whatever, that doesn't mean that Fish and Game wouldn't. It doesn't mean Highway Patrol wouldn't. It doesn't mean that the DMV cops that have guns now wouldn't, or the Insurance Commission, they have guns too, that they wouldn't, or that DOJ would come in and kick the door in and do their thing at midnight when the sheriff wasn't even around. The interposition of state against state is a great idea, but it won't work. You need a state that has constitutional liberty to begin with, because sheriffs cannot be compelled to, or cannot be asked to stand on that stump alone and stand in the hurricane and say, we will stop the state government from infringing on every right that we have. Number one, it's too much to ask. Right. And number two, it won't work. So what we need to do is we need to form a government that has constitutional liberty so that everyone is in a position to demand their liberty and expect to get it. But you can't stand here and ask one elected official to stand between you and the hurricane that's coming towards you. And it's too late anyway.
And I think we do have to remind ourselves that they are. You guys are the ones that are doing it right now.
They do to the best of their ability.
That's right.
And all the constitutional sheriffs in the North State do that. But you can't ask more than that.
All right,
Mark,
let's go there to Bernie.
Mark, thank you very much for clarifying that subject. That's been a bone of contention going here, and thanks for clearing the whole thing up for us, buddy.
Yeah, thank you.
My question is, to whoever on the panel can answer it, is I had a background check on a AR-15 serial number, lower, several years ago. Just curious if the federal government knows that that belongs to an AR-15 or if that is just considered a long rifle.
Who was that question for?
Whoever can answer.
I'll answer that question because I happen to be an FFL licensed dealer as well. Under the 4473s now, it can be a long gun, a shotgun, a handgun, or a receiver. They don't know that it is anything other than a receiver if that's the way you registered it. And the same is true with the state of California. So that's a direct answer to that question.
So I did not register it. I just had a background check, just a normal background check when I purchased the AR-15 lower receiver. It could be any of the above, correct?
Yeah, when you filled out the 4473 in the dealer record of sales, you had a standard NICS check, background check, and the state of California extra super special blue ribbon value-added background check that they add to the background check system. That's all that's been done.
Hey, I actually have a question for the only opinion that matters in the room, the people sitting here. I would like to know from the crowd how many people came here to learn about our loss of liberty and surrender it, or how many people came here to actually work together, develop solutions, and ask these people that are here asking for our money, our votes, and our support if they're going to support us and our solutions because theirs are failing dramatically.
Let's move to the next question. I'm not sure how to, yeah.
I'd like comment from Mr. Reed, Mr. Griffith, Mr. Paredes on, I see where Eric Holder is now retained by the state of California with taxpayer money, and we've talked about both where, they take our money, they fight against us and that kind of thing. But my question would be, what do you see
not happening, but your best guess from you gentlemen down there in Sacramento as to what might this man start doing to hurt us more?
Attorney General, former Attorney General, it's hard to say that. Eric Holder was contracted by Senate Pro Tem President Kevin DeLeon as a special attorney out of his discretionary funds. He's being, I believe they said it was a 3-month contract at $25,000 a month. And it has now been pointed out by a newly elected assemblyman from El Dorado Hills that said that that's actually unconstitutional under California Constitution, because the Constitution says that if you have enough attorneys or personnel in the state who work for the state, who have the capacity to provide that kind of work, whether it's legal or something else, that you cannot contract out for that service. So that is an issue that will probably be taken to court. The concentration that they're talking about is focused on immigration issues as far as the Trump administration. That is what the published reason for having him there in order to fight the Trump administration. But Assemblyman Kiley from El Dorado Hills filed a petition and said and made a big statement that he believes that it's unconstitutional in the California Constitution for them to continue to do that. So that's going to be an issue that you know, if you're saying why is the state legislature wasting our tax dollars, we can say we can talk about that all along, because they waste our tax dollars any way they can. And they are not king, as was pointed out by Mark in many different ways. They are not rulers, they are not emperors, they are not, you know, they are elected officials who are elected by the people and are given the ability to pass legislation with our consent. So if they're acting in an unconstitutional manner, you can bet your sweet Pippi that we're going to make that very clear and do everything we can to stop that. Okay. And is that clear?
Yeah, I was just concerned that because of his thing with Fast and Furious, he'd also get involved in
The commentary from both Kevin DeLeon and from former Attorney General Holder is that their concentration is on immigration, protecting sanctuary cities and stuff like that.
My question is for both of the county sheriffs. The new assault weapons, regulations they came out with are neither simple nor easy to understand. They're complex. They require small parts, small things. And we're all here trying to get a better understanding of how to comply and educate ourselves. Will the deputies and the people in your office who we're going to interact with on a daily basis, will they be as equally informed to avoid seizures and things based on I don't want to say ignorance, but just not knowing those new laws and things? Like will the deputies and other agencies be informing their officers so that when we do our best effort to comply with the law, that our weapons are not still taken because they don't understand it?
So for Shasta County, yes, we'll have to get that information out so they understand what to enforce and how to enforce it. And they need all those. It is very, very complex, and it is difficult to understand even if you're a gun person. And not every officer is a gun person. And there's a lot of ins and outs. Part of it is with those new regulations on the AWs that they're trying to put out is there's 40 pages of it. And so going through there, and that's why it's important for CRPA, gun owners, and NRA to help interact with the state and try and get that narrowed down. But yeah, we're going to have to inform our, just like when other new laws come up, we get education for our deputies as well.
Thank you.
Same in Tehama, real quick, same in Tehama. But I just want to add that our deputies, we do the best I can to keep them trained up on all the current laws, but we can't vouch for any other officer of the law having that same standard that we demand in our counties.
Hi, it's for the sheriffs. I'm trying to figure out a place where people will actually stand finally back in defiance like they're supposed to.
I don't understand the question. What's your question?
Okay, let me put it another way. So basically, the first line of defense for our Constitution is basically whoever the government pushes out to say, hey, whether you can do this or not. You're the ones that have to take the first step to say in defiance while we already say it ourselves. Otherwise, the plan will fail.
So I don't understand. But there are things you guys are doing, right? So, did you want to try to answer
Well,
that?
I just want to say, you know, and I made a note earlier on, the first line of defense is not us. And I say this a lot. It's you guys. Whether it be a predator, a government, each other, it's you guys are the first line of defense. That's why, like somebody on here said, that's why these things are so important. Because the better educated we are about what's going on, and the better our voices are heard, and the better we sound, the better off we're going to be.
If I think I understand the question correctly, you asked it earlier, Joe, when you were trying to summarize where are the law enforcement officials going to stand and the district attorney in terms of trying to be between us, and I think Mr. Baird answered that very clearly that's a lone position, it's unreasonable at some point. So I believe that's kind of what you're asking.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
And I'll just add too, I would rather miss 1,000 crooks than arrest one innocent person. Okay, that's been my philosophy for 20-some years and 29 years now.
Yeah, my question is for the two reps from the NRA and Gun Owners of California. Many of us in this room for dozens of years have been paying lots and lots of money for dues and the ILA and all kinds of political action committees and everything. And with all these new laws coming on board, and I know you guys are going to egregiously go after them, and you are going to be filing lawsuits, and I think everybody pretty much understands that. But in the meantime, in the next 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, there's going to be tens of hundreds of thousands of Californians that are going to be feeling like they have to run down and turn their magazines in. They have to call their sheriff, police departments and try to register or contact DOJ and comply with all this. At what point are the gun organizations going to take out full-page ads in newspapers, run television ads, and billboards on freeways? I'm not talking about magazine, articles inside your own magazines. I'm talking about that Joe Public driving down I-5 or watching his TV set is going to see this and warn them about what happens when you register and turn in things. Irregardless of where the status of the law is, of warning people, maybe you should withhold and wait till the outcomes of these laws, or maybe take your stuff out of state or something else, but to basically tell people that what happens when you register and turn things in, based on history.
That's a great question, and that's something that both Sam, Roy, and myself always point out during these committee hearings is, where's the public notice? Because July 1 rolls around each year, and we all see the newspapers, they print it. Here's all the new laws that are going to into effect this year, right? And we always point that out with the gun laws. This is something that Joe Citizen has bought legally under the laws, under our already restrictive laws, and how are you going to inform him that he could be a felon overnight? And that's something that we point out, because that takes a lot of resources to go out. And for our organizations, we're here to fight for our members, here to inform our members, and to run a public relations campaign like that, that's very expensive. So what we're doing is right now, and I'd encourage you, for whoever hasn't signed up for our alerts, get our alerts. We're doing a lot with education right now. We're running webinars. And over the summer, we did a series of webinars that went over all the new laws that passed. And those laws passed, Governor Brown signed those on July 1st for a majority of them. And then Prop 63 came later. But we already did a series of webinars. They're archived for viewing. So I'd encourage you to look at those, share those with your friends, share them on social media. And then just last Tuesday, we just did a webinar on the most recent iteration of the assault weapon regulations that went over that. And so we're doing our best to educate the public. But if your question is, are we going to run a $50 million PR campaign? We just don't have the resources to do something like that. But we're doing our very best through our webinars.
Did that answer your question?
Okay, let me put it in perspective that way I think we all understand. The cost of a billboard campaign and full-page ads being put out throughout the state of California would cost us more than all the money that we raise and spend here in the state of California amongst our organizations in any given year. Last year, for the first time, the pro-gun movement, which consisted of our three organizations, all of the sheriffs, virtually all of law enforcement, we were able to raise about $1.4 million to fight Prop 63. That is more money than we have been able to raise and spend to do a public campaign with advertising and information than we have since 1982 and Prop 15, where we were able to raise $3.4 million when they were trying to ban handguns via the initiative, and we were successful there. What has happened now, because when we do a radio ad or a billboard ad or a newspaper ad, they are allowed to charge us the highest possible rate they can charge. They're not charging us what they charge Safeway to put in a full-page ad or something like that. They're paying us, requiring us to pay the highest possible political rate that you can have. So our ad would cost literally 10 times more than an ad for any sort of a commercial advertiser. And that's why we are growing with the times. I mean, I'm the senior guy on this table probably. And mail and advertising and newspaper and all of that stuff was the way we used to communicate it. We are coming up to speed through the internet, through social media, where we have been able to share impressions and information by the millions now here in the state of California, and we're spreading that word. And yes, some of us still have trouble with dealing with Facebook and all of this other stuff, but it is reaching millions of people here in the state of California. That's why, even though we lost Prop 63 they cast 6 million votes against us, there were 4 million votes that voted with us. There are a lot of people who voted and took a positive action to protect their rights. And we're doing everything we can to continue to communicate with those people, because not all of them are members of National Rifle Association, CRPA, and GOC. So, you want us to do a PR campaign? It's going to cost a lot of money. Way more money.
Hold on. Mark, I saw you. Did you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I did. You know, a lot of this comes from the legislature, and it's really geographically from a couple of areas. It comes from Los Angeles, it comes from the Bay Area. Those are the two areas that primarily come up with this goofy stuff. And those are the two areas you'd have to educate, because they have the vast majority of the votes. We know geographically that Northern California has about 1.2, 1.4 million people, where Southern California's got 36 million, right? 30 million. So what we need to do is we need to change the representative ratio so that we have some say over our own lives, because we're the ones that want to, okay, yeah, I wasn't going there exactly, but yeah, I'm for that too. And what we've done is the Jefferson Formation Committee has started a lawsuit against the state of California for lack of representation and dilution of vote. Now, mind you, this has nothing to do with state split, because you can't split a state judicially. It's unconstitutional. But what we're going to do is we're going to demonstrate that Northern California has no representation in the state legislature to prevent these things from happening to begin with, so that we have to fight them and spend $50 million of everybody's money. And what we want to do is we want to take California to a governmental model where every single county has equal representation in the state legislature of California, and where no county has less than one assembly person, because that's where revenue bills issue from. In order to do that, we need a state assembly person for, say, 1 to 2 to 3,000 people. And the state of California is going to go crazy, because that means they'll have 14,000 assembly people. Now, when you finish laughing, think about this. How could the gun groups or the anti-gun groups bribe 14,000 assembly people? How could they even bribe 7,000 plus one in order to pass a bill? It would be impossible, because those legislators would now represent communities. Party politics would have less influence in them, because you and your neighbors would control. We'd have an assembly person just about for the people in this room. And if that guy passed a law that you didn't like, it would be cheap and easy to get rid of him instead of trying to get rid of the law. So instead of spending $50 million to educate the people of Los Angeles to something that they won't be educated about ever, because they don't know how we live and they don't know how important these things are, and they probably never know. So instead of exhausting the resources of Gun Owners of California and National Rifle Association when they need that money to do really important work in court, what we need to do is change the representative ratio in the state of California so that Northern California has some and we can fight this stuff to begin with. So if you know, support the lawsuit, because we're fixing to file that, and with a ninth justice who is a conservative, thanks to the National Rifle Association and groups just like them, we're going to win if we can afford to pay for the lawsuit. We're going to win.
I have to assume that answered your question because it answered about 10 in my head as he was talking. So go ahead.
Again, for the sheriffs. So we're all flawed. We all make mistakes. Guess what? So does the Supreme Court. So does the state Supreme Court. Everybody makes mistakes. The government does unjust, unethical, illegal, unconstitutional things all the time. And that's what we're here to challenge. So my question for the sheriffs here is, we're all here because I think we're getting close to a brink. I don't know how close we are, but we're getting close to a brink. What's going to take a single event or a group of events before you stand up for us against the state or the federal government? This is for the sheriffs.
Well, see, I'm 29 years in law enforcement, and I can honestly say that every day of my law enforcement career, I've stood up for the citizens of my county. From the time I worked in the jail, patrol, investigations, major crimes, dope, and to where I am now. So that's my answer. Every day I support the Constitution. Every day I have to mind the Constitution, and I have to do things right. So that's my answer.
I got you beat by about 10 years. I've been doing this 38 years, the exact same thing. Yeah, we may not agree with the courts, but that's what the whole court process is for. When they had Peruta, didn't affect any of us because we're already issuing CCWs with almost a shell issue, but pretty close to it, but didn't affect us at all. But then it went to en banc, and it still didn't affect us. That en banc is 12 justices making a ruling on it. And hopefully we'll be able to get that before SCOTUS and see where it goes from there with both Peruta and the Richards case and others involving into it when we have a new appointment and then have it still as a conservative Supreme Court.
I just want to say one thing real quick. It's 4:30.
I was just going to start.
Oh, were you? We think alike, bro. It's 4:30, so we want to have a few more questions. So if you've already asked a question, then we want people to be able to ask a question who haven't asked one yet. And what do you guys think? Go till 5? What do you want to do? Tell me. Keep going? Do you want to keep going? Keep going? Okay. Then here we go.
Real quick before you get going, though, also I'd like to add, after you're sitting for a while, even these guys, you start to get a little antsy. Start texting on your phones and start talking. Well, we still have people who really want to get their questions asked. And these guys are sitting up here focusing and helping us out and getting these questions answered. So, let's try to focus for everybody. And stretch.
Yeah, why don't everybody stand up and stretch for a second?
You guys want to stretch?
And if you have to go to the restroom, go. Anybody want to hold the mic? No. Anyway,
let's get rolling.
Back to the questions.
I've got a regulatory question, probably for the three gentlemen that are the lobbyists. The California bullet button, now that it's now considered an assault rifle, as far as registration, if we don't register that, are we facing the same penalty as if we had a non-bullet button assault rifle as prior to?
Yeah, it's a wobbler, so a misdemeanor felony. So it's a serious. It's how would you describe it?
The district attorneys who are taking those cases have the ability on a wobbler to charge the violation of a crime as a misdemeanor or as a felony, and it's basically up to them to decide which level they want to charge. So yes, the answer is that if you have a bullet button gun, that you don't either register with the state of California as an assault weapon, and the new regulations say that you will not be able to take the bullet button off, or you can reconfigure that gun into a California compliant gun, a featureless gun, or you can disassemble the gun if you don't want to register it and you don't want to do anything and wait for us to fight to successfully restore our rights, which I am confident we are going to do through the courts, and then you can reassemble your gun and put all of the cool Barbie doll stuff on it.
Okay.
I guess my question is, because a bullet button makes a weapon inherently unsafe to use, and so a standard mag release actually makes a weapon safer. So if we're not going to comply with the new law, are we safe? Are we facing the same issue if we have a standard magazine release or a bullet button, I guess is my question.
It will be a violation of the law either way.
Okay, but that's the misdemeanor
Felony wobbler.
Either way, whether it's a standard equipped magazine release or the new bullet
You're in
buttons.
trouble both ways, either way, the same way.
Cool, thank you very much.
Okay.
I wanted to make it even more simple than that. Another state, I don't recall whether it was Massachusetts or Connecticut or something like that, was trying to do the same thing, register your assault weapon or whatever. And I think about 4 people complied. And they basically said, we don't have the means to enforce this. What can we expect if we all just basically tell them, no, I'm not, I have no intention of registering anything. It's unconstitutional. Too bad we're not doing it. None of us.
So your question is, what if we don't comply, and who's that question to?
Well, anybody basically wants to field it. What do you think we can expect if we take that tact?
I guess Mark's going to field it.
Well, here's the question. Do you have a line in the sand?
Very much so.
What is it?
It's no.
What? Well, why?
It's no.
Okay. So how did we get a country here? How did 3% of the people in this country, only 3%, take a country from the most well-armed, well-trained, powerful, financially successful nation on earth?
Well, basically, I guess I'm also trying to say it to everybody in the room.
Well, here's how they did it. They did it by devoting their lives, their treasure, and their sacred honor to secure liberty for their posterity. The gentlemen at the other end of the table have a position that they have to take. I'm sure their personal views may be diametrically opposed to the position they have to take with regard to the law. I will not submit. I will not surrender. I will not give up my guns just because the state legislature decides to take a dictionary definition that was defined by Supreme Court case law in the Miller case as to what is an assault weapon, which is a fully automatic weapon, and change the dictionary definition to mean now it has a hand grip. Well, next year, it's got a bullet button. Well, it's got a releasable magazine. Well, it's got a releasable magazine that has 10, no 5, no 2, no 1. No, you have to take the gun apart to be able to reload it. I mean, those are moving targets that I'm not going to comply with. Sam is right. You have a few choices. Don't comply, don't submit, take your chances with the wobbler. And by the way, under California new sentencing guidelines, it's only a misdemeanor to have unpermitted sex with an unconscious person. It's not against the law to be a child prostitute now, but it is.
Touch that one.
But it is against the law to have a magazine release on your weapon. So you have a choice to make, and you have to take responsibility for that choice, just like all of us do. And if we all act together, in other words, however, they can pick you off one at a time. So here's what Ben Franklin said about that. If we don't hang together, we will most assuredly hang separately.
That was pretty much what I was trying to get to everybody in the room, is we need to stand together.
All right.
Okay, so just to clarify, there was talk about the wobbler, misdemeanor, felony. There is another decision that can be made and is made oftentimes in my office daily, not to charge. So, again, both sheriffs have alluded to it. There's discretion, and that's what, when you elect either myself, my sheriff in my county, Dave Henkrat, or Shasta County Sheriff's Tom Basenko, you are electing us to exercise proper discretion. So it's case by case. It's based on someone's past criminal history. It's based on a lot of factors. But just because something comes to our desk to charge doesn't mean we charge it. And there's reasons we don't charge it. If the case was perhaps not investigated properly, but there's also another reason we don't charge it. We just don't want to. So understand that that's what you guys do when you elect us.
Okay, next
Yeah,
question.
this is for Sam, I think. Mike Payne, I'm with Shasta County Sportsman, and we're affiliated with CRPA. And when the lead ban went in, I called the CRPA about what was going to happen in the courts. And I didn't really get, I thought, a straight answer. It said something about standing and had to be fully implemented and a bunch of stuff. Can you explain the court action, how either like the lead ban or this current proposed litigation, what does the standing mean? I don't understand much of that.
First of all, the courts can decide as to who can file the lawsuits, and they can grant standing to there's a whole criteria that they have to follow as to who has the right to sue on particular issues. With regards to the lead ammo ban, it isn't necessarily just an issue of standing. There are other lawsuits that have been filed to restore the Second Amendment to what we believe it should be, and some of them have not even been filed here in the state of California. I'm telling you here that the NRA and CRPA and Gun Owners of California, we file friend of the court briefs on cases that are in other states, in other district courts, and in other appellate courts, with the intention of having that make its way to the Supreme Court faster than if we started from scratch here. And victory in those cases will help us to eliminate a lot of the gun laws that we have here in the state of California. The best attorneys told us that going in specifically with the lead ammo ban was not the best case for us to go into the courts with in order to get rid of it. That there are other issues that will clarify what the Second Amendment means, that it is an unalienable right, that it means that you have the right to have guns and to carry them outside of your home. And then we build on those legal issues to say that guns are not guns without ammunition, so they are an essential part of arms, and that is the way that we will get rid of the lead ammo ban and other things like that. You know, we get your support because of the experience and the effort that we do on your behalf. To some extent, we're asking that you work with us as we work with the best constitutional attorneys in the country in order to restore our rights as fast as we can. A question was asked in the break about you know, these lawsuits and why can't we file them right now, and it's going to take years to get them. We understand that lawsuits take a long time to file. That's why we're not limiting ourselves just to the lawsuits that have been filed here in the state of California, and we are supporting lawsuits that are far down the process. Some of them have already been ruled on by other appellate court districts that are on their way to the Supreme Court. We have every intention on trying to take advantage of every one of those lawsuits to fully restore our gun rights here in the state of California. If they declare that it's unconstitutional to ban magazines, to ban ammunition, to ban semi-automatics in Ohio, that ruling from the Supreme Court will not only apply to Ohio, but it'll apply to California, and we will work precipitously to get rid of the laws here in the state of California. I hope,
Okay,
Dan?
thank you. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, and I just wanted to add something to that.
Well, hold on. We're short on
Pass
time.
the mic. We
we're
can't
short
do
on
that.
time. I'm sorry. I don't want to do that to you, but we're short on time. We got a lot of people. So, did that answer your question? No.
I have a two-part question for the lobbyists.
Hold on real quick. That did not answer your question?
Yeah, the lead ban, I see it as a kind of a separate issue from gun rights. As a hunter, you know, we can be allowed to have rifles, but if we got inefficient bullets.
So your question is, the lead ammo is being banned, and are they doing anything about it? and what can they do about it? Is that your question? What can be done about it? Can you jump in on that one that you were about to?
Yeah.
I'll let Roy, he's
Okay.
a retired game warden here.
Pretty much, the lead ban was shoved down our throat based on the condor thing, and then it was allowed to, like a cancer, move across the rest of the state. The last 12 years of my career, I had to bite my tongue on that. And the only thing that the state can govern about around, the state being the Department of Fish and Wildlife, is its efficiency to take the wildlife in a swift, humane manner. And lead, versus non-toxic ammunition, that has nothing to do with a means of take. Both are an effective means of take. And so they really have no grounds for the lead other than the toxicity.
So,
and the
so can you do anything about it?
Yes, we're fighting it. It's gonna have to come in the hopper. It hasn't gone into effect yet, and it kind of comes down to the no victim, no crime. As Dan and Sam explained earlier, we don't have a case until a citizen like you has been impacted by it. All these laws go into effect in the perfect storm. This is all going to go down in July of 2019 is when this statewide ban goes into effect. And hopefully by then we have all the tools in the tool belt to take this out. And we are going to fight it, absolutely.
Okay.
You can't do anything until it goes into effect because there's no victim of a ban that hasn't gone into effect.
Okay, over there.
I have a two-part question for the lobbyists. I guess the first part is, what are the parameters on this new ammunition law? What is going to be required, or do we know yet?
Sure. One of the things that I mentioned earlier is we're waiting on regulations. So until we have regulations, we really can't give you a clear answer on the ammunition.
And that deals with bought fixed ammunition over the counter, correct? Fixed ammunition, you go down to Sportsman and buy a box of 22s.
Yes.
Well, what it's going to do for somebody like me that's been reloading for over 50 years.
That's reloading components are not covered by.
Part of it's in there. If I load a box of 25 rounds for my son and we go out to the Reading Gun Club and we shoot trap, I'm now a felon for supplying him and manufacturing ammunition.
No, that's not the case.
That's what it says.
Yeah.
What Dan said is true. Folks, let me help you understand this. We had an initiative that passed, and we had legislation that passed, and they don't agree, okay? And the Attorney General's office told us personally, we don't know which one applies, so we're going to work at trying to either meld them together or make them both apply, which means, and we said, well, that's stupid. We're going to have to go to court. And they said, we fully expect you to do that. Okay. Now, with regards to ammunition, hand loaders, reloaders, of which I am one, totally unaffected. You don't have to register bullets, powder, primers, cases. And the law, both the initiative and the legislation say that you cannot transfer more than 50 rounds on an irregular basis to any individual with a total of 500 rounds without getting a license to do so. Now, shooting them at the range and stuff like that, when you shoot ammunition at the range, you don't have to register it. The issue is that you can't take any of that ammo off of the range in order to do that. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, my son who lives in Orlando spends time with me reloading all of the ammunition, and my ammunition is his ammunition, and we shoot it whenever the heck we want to, and we are in compliance with the law, both under the initiative and the legislation.
Hearing anything in Sacramento about them wanting to ban they've already stated that they won't allow you to go out of state and return with the ammunition. What if I go out of state and return with the powder, the bullets, the primers, the casings, whatever?
Not an issue, not an issue. You can buy ammunition or make ammunition here in the state of California, go outside of California, and come back in with that ammunition. What you cannot do is go outside of California, buy ammunition, and bring any of it back without sending it to one of these newly licensed ammunition vendors who will do the background check, and you'll have to pay a fee, whether it's you have to get either the $50 card according to the edition, or you pay a $1 per box fee according to the legislation. That's some of the conflict there, and
okay,
it's that confusing and that clear.
All right, good. Before your question, Terry, real quick, someone sent a question up here to me that I think will be pretty quick, and I think it's for the sheriffs. Who determines how long CCWs can be issued for, and is there any reason they couldn't be extended to 5 years?
Yes, state law, it allows only 2 years for that. Other states have longer. There is some other exceptions for judges. Judges go out to 6 years by state law. So the way to get that changed is through our legislative process.
Okay, thank you.
Or become a judge.
Or become a judge.
Before we go to the next question, is there anybody on Bernie's side of the room who has, okay, so you guys are it?
No. We got one question standing over there.
We won't forget you, sir. I know you've been waiting all day.
Yeah.
No, I'm just trying to see if there's, because how many more can we take here? How many more questions legitimately?
I think we only got time for maybe two or three questions.
Okay, we have time for, let's say 4 questions, but they had, panel, please answer pithily. You guys been great. Yeah. Give this panel a hand. They've been fantastic and really good. Okay, so what we want to do is we'll go ahead and we'll take a couple questions here, couple questions there, and then we're just going to be done. Yeah?
And don't leave. After we've asked the questions, let's thank our panel. Don't just get up and leave.
Yeah, we also have a couple of announcements.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so we'll start here, and here we go.
This is for District Attorney Cohen. One of the favorite tactics of the courts is to declare a plaintiff has no standing. Would I have to become a lawbreaker to become withstanding?
Standing is the discussion of who has the legal right to bring a suit. And we're talking about standing in regard to a civil case, right? I think is what you're referring to.
Challenging these laws.
Okay, so challenging the law. So you have to have some reason. And it depends on what issue or what law it is to be challenged. I think Roy suggested, no one can sue the state in regard to the ammunition ban because the law is not even in effect at this time. So what you need to show that you were affected by the law. It doesn't necessarily mean that you were a lawbreaker, but that you're in some way affected. And then you're going to argue with the court whether or not you're truly affected, whether or not you're a party that's been truly affected. So it's not as simple. Sure, if you became a lawbreaker, it's easy, you would have standing. But you may be able to obtain standing in some other manner. That was about 3 months of law school right there.
Yeah, Mark, I have a question about the Jefferson movement. There's a lot of ambiguity to me as far as the timing. We've been going on and on and on. So there's no clear picture to people, especially me, what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and how soon it's going to become a state of Jefferson, because coming soon could mean 10 years from now. But at the same token, what I want to see is the people in this room are like a muscle for a boxer. If he doesn't train, if he doesn't keep it fit, then when he's ready to fight, he's not going to be worth a darn. And I don't want to see the muscle in here atrophy. I want to see people being, given the promise and it be carried through. I want to see someone step forward and say, like Gavin Newsom did down in San Francisco, you're going to take this whether you like it or not. Go ahead, Sacramento, we're leaving.
Well, first of all, I'm not a big fan of Gavin Newsom, but yeah, that's a good question. We have a Supreme Court attorney, we have a federal court attorney. This will be filed in federal court for the Eastern District, because if you have a brain in your head, you never file anything in state court that you want to win. So we have found a way to get this in federal court. I just had this conversation with 2 of the attorneys 2 days ago. I said, people have been waiting a long time. I mean, we appealed to the legislature. The silence was deafening. We've sent tens of, if not hundreds of thousands of emails, phone calls, letters, blah, blah, blah. So our next avenue was to sue them, because we now have standing. We can prove that we have a lack of representation because we've been harmed by that lack of representation. And we have the third remedy, or the third third leg of the stool for a federal lawsuit, and that's a remedy. And the remedy is more representation for lack of representation. But here's the deal, and this is what the Supreme Court attorney said to me. First of all, we have a plan that has been legally tested, and there is precedent to support this plan. And I can prove to you what I'm saying after the meeting if you like. Our case will go to the Supreme Court, and they cannot refuse to take it. We're not applying for cert. The Supreme Court will have primary jurisdiction as the appeal process from the federal court, the way we're going about it. That took a long time to engineer, and we had to have a Supreme Court case in order to prove that so that we could use the same method, and that was the case Abbott versus Evenwell. So we have a method to go to the Supreme Court. It is proven. They cannot say no to our case. If we get to the Supreme Court, according to Clarence Thomas's dissent of a unanimous decision, which is pretty odd in the Evenwell case, we're going to win because Thomas told us exactly how to win the case, and that's what we're doing. So here's the rub. Our Supreme Court attorney says, because I told him, look, there's a lot of pressure here. The muscle thing that you said, and I use different terminology, but that's what we're facing. It's pretty hard to keep 100,000 people stirred up for years and years. Well, we've only been engaged in attempting this judicial remedy for about 6, 7, 8, 9 months now. That's not very long in court, I'll tell you, and especially in federal court. But here's the problem, and this is what the Supreme Court attorney told me, and this is very important, so please take this to heart. He says, we will win this case, but I want to nail down every single board in the case before we present it. There's only one way to lose this thing, and that's by not being cautious and not covering all of our bases. And he said, it is far more important to me to do this right than it is to do it quickly. If our attorneys do this right, we're going to win, and it's going to force a dramatic and extremely dramatic expansion in the representation of California so that the people of this county and every other county will have some. Now, mind you, this is important because why? Because there are 35 rural counties and only 18 urban counties. If we win this lawsuit, we can stop this legislation in the California Senate or in the California Assembly if our plan works out. But in the California Senate, nevertheless, because there are 35 rural counties who will have a state senator. And that will stop all of the stuff that San Francisco and Los Angeles wants to do. But we have to do it right, and that takes time. When is it going to file? I don't know. When it's right. I hope soon. I hope tomorrow. But when it's right, we'll file it. And it should be in the next few months.
Okay.
Real quick, and I'm sure this is probably impossible to answer, but on that question that you answered, I'm a CEO of a company, and I like numbers and scale. Is it 5 years, 10 years, 100 years? You know, do you have an idea of even possibly what it is?
You mean for the lawsuit?
For a time frame for the state of Jefferson to come about? Or?
Well, here's the deal. You know, what we hope is we hope to force a legislative settlement out of a judicial solution. Now, that course of action is fraught with danger because, of course, it's never been done before. So what we hope to do in the lawsuit, we hope to force such a dramatic expansion in representation in the state of California. Our goal is, constitutionally in 1879, we had one assembly person for every 2,700 people. That's what we're hoping to achieve because your vote is diluted if you don't have that. In 1879, your vote meant 1 for 2,700.
So it's take that step
now
and then the next step.
Now it's 1 for 500,000. If we win and we get a California State Assembly that has 14,000 people, here's what the court typically says. Yeah, you're right, you've been screwed, you need more representation, you boys go in the back room and you settle the ratio and come back out and tell us what you decide. Well, we hold out for 1879 levels, 1 for 2,700.
Okay.
State of California says, we can't do that, guys. We'd have to get a bigger switchboard and a bigger building,
So
and all
it's
the
gonna take
egos
a
would
while.
collapse the town.
It's gonna take a long time.
Then what they're going to say is, what's it going to take to make you boys go away? Because we're not doing that. And we say you take your monoparty that we know you control, and you pass legislation for an Article 4, Section 3 state split, and then we drop this deal and go away, and you can keep screwing your own people till the cows come home.
Okay, excuse me. My question is about what does a warrant look like? There was a parole officer a long time ago that talked about he'd go to a house, he would hold up any piece of paper, and the average person doesn't know what a warrant looks like. And I'm one of those. I don't know what a warrant looks like. And do they have a right to shine a light in my house? Because when I come to the door, I probably got something in my hand. And it makes the average cop probably pretty nervous. But I mean, what does a warrant look like? So when they hold it up to my window and I don't open the door, how do I know what a warrant is?
Was that for either one of us?
I don't know who wants to answer, either you or...
No, that's fine. And I agree with you. I mean, none of us, without any kind of legal training or experience, would typically know what a signed warrant would look like from a judge. So I can speak to you after and give you some suggestions, but I think it's a good thought.
Well, here's the other thing, is that they probably will not have that warrant with them anyway. No, really, yeah. Yeah. You know, the sheriff's office in our county is the one that holds the warrants for the county. So all the signed original warrants are in our office. No, I'm not kidding.
No, actually, I think the sheriff, you're talking about arrest warrants? Okay, with a search warrant, they potentially would have it.
Okay, thanks. So real simple, a warrant is an order in writing signed by a judge directing a peace officer to search for a specific thing in a specific place. Those are the elements of what you want to see on a warrant. Okay, order in writing signed by a judge directing a peace officer to search for specific things in a specific place.
Oh, that's helpful.
Could be on anything, really, probably. Sure, yeah.
All right, yeah.
Question for Sam. If we want to be compliant when we're at the range, me and my friends, what do we need to do for me to temporarily, for the day, while we're both present, to allow my friend to use my firearm in my presence at the range that day, versus what if I'm at an event and someone else's rifle fails and I want to loan somebody I don't know my rifle for the rest of the day, again, in my presence?
Under the laws, this is unchanged, that as long as you are in control of the firearm, that means that you're there. You can loan a gun to a friend or a family member without having to go through any hoops or anything like that. If I lend a gun to Roy, I am not in violation of the law, as long as I am present and I have control of that firearm, and so that it's not going to be an issue. Now, if you want to do that and not have any sort of a problems, is that you configure your gun to be California compliant, so it's featureless, and then all of the assault weapon laws don't apply, none of that stuff. And as far as lending a gun, we can lend guns during the hunting season without having to do anything. If you lend a gun to anybody other than a blood relative, that not uncles and aunts, but a child, grandchild, father, grandfather, mother, that way, you can do so for 30 days. Anything over 30 days, you have to go to a dealer and legally transfer it to them. Anybody outside of the hunting season, you would have to go to a dealer and do a transfer of them, unless you are there in control of that firearm. And being in control means that you're present at the event. If another competitor and you want to let him use your gun, you're still in control of the gun. So that part of the law hasn't changed. That part of the law hasn't changed.
Okay. Man, we still got a lot of questions left, don't we? How many do we have here? Just 3? What do you guys think? Do we have time for 3 more? We got 4, so we got 4. So 4 more. I think these are going to be the last 4, okay?
Definitely the last 4.
So go ahead.
Okay, so we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4.
There you go. We can count.
So my question is for the audience rhetorically, but for the lobbyists. With the understanding that the state of Jefferson would be a constitutional carry state, and it would cover 1/3 of California's landmass, is there any reason that you don't, or that you would not help fund our lawsuit and publicly endorse the state of Jefferson movement?
First of all, let me answer that from Gun Owners of California. We have members of Gun Owners of California that are across the state. We represent every one of them. And our promise to them in our founding documents, in our bylaws, and I believe it's true for the other organizations, are to protect the right to keep and bear arms in the state of California. We don't give out our lists. We don't join other extracurricular activities that are not related to our gun rights specifically. That is the promise that we have made to everybody who gives us, who blesses us with their resources so that we can do this fight. That doesn't mean that we don't inform people and we say, hey, go to the State of Jefferson website, support them. If you live in those counties, even if you don't live in those counties, you might want to support that effort and stuff like that. But we make a commitment and we are very protective of that commitment. And our commitment is that if you give us money through a donation, we will use that money to protect your gun rights. And that is true for every gun owner in the state of California. Now, when State of Jefferson comes out, we're going to have to, I live in the state of Jefferson. Gun owners of California might have to be run by somebody else because, I will be fighting for gun rights. Well, it's not going to be a fight. We're going to have a weekly, shooting matches and show and tells and gun shows and stuff like that. We'll be able to trade guns to each other, lend them to each other, do all kinds of fun stuff. So that's a really, really good question, and we are stewards of the resources we are blessed with by our members and supporters. That's why we don't support particularly, because we have gun owners that are in San Diego are going to say, oh, heck, half of our support is going to go away with the state of Jefferson, and that's going to hurt us. Well, we make a blanket commitment to all of our support.
Yeah, and I don't know if it needs clarification, but you're obligated to spend the money the way you promised to spend the money before they gave you the money.
Ethically and morally.
And
yes,
every other way
absolutely.
possible, right? So it's already earmarked to where it goes.
That's something that I can take back to national headquarters and look at. I can't give you an answer right here. I think Sam summed it up very nicely, though.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. We got an order to the questions here. Go ahead.
All right, so for the new assault weapon laws that are coming out, if I placed a mag lock on my AR, will I have to change any of the features?
Based on the current regulations right now, the AR maglock looks like it will be an acceptable way to take your firearm out of being considered an assault weapon, based on the current regs that have been submitted. So until those are adopted, again, it's still a gray area, but I don't anticipate they would probably deviate from that. So stay tuned. Yeah.
I have two questions, real quick ones.
Good.
First one is magazines for handguns, same as rifles, 10 rounds or less?
Yes.
Secondly, I'm looking around the room and I noticed that most of the people here are probably 60 plus. Is there any activity going on to generate interest in younger people joining us?
Oh, absolutely. With our grassroots program, we have a number of programs, and one of them is called NRAU, and that's where they go out to college campuses and they work with the various clubs to interest people, let them know about what we're doing and the attack on our rights. We also have numerous youth programs, CRPA does, GOC does, et cetera, that we're out actively informing people. In fact, Roy might want to give you a spin on what's happening next weekend.
CRPA has dedicated half of their staff towards youth outreach, and they have a room at the office dedicated to nothing but hunter education. This weekend, we'll be at the ISE show, outreaching to thousands of parents and youth with just exactly what we have going on. Youth hunts, pheasant hunts, youth camps. So by all means, we're recognizing that the future is with the youth. Thank you.
We have Eddie Eagle through one of our instructors.
Exactly. Sacramento, it's at Cal Expo.
My question is, while Donald Trump was running for presidency and recently he said that he would stop federal funding to sanctuary cities. My question is, and I'm not an attorney or a politician, so maybe I don't understand how it works, but isn't it possible for us to lobby Donald Trump to stop federal funding to California as long as they continue to suppress our constitutional rights.
I do.
That's a real good question, and I'll tell you this from our national organization, Gun Owners of America. We know that there is conversation amongst many members of Congress right now that are considering federal bills that would accomplish something like that, that would talk about federal supremacy, and you cannot do these unconstitutional bills legislatively on local levels if they violate the Constitution. There's all kinds of legal issues with regards to that, whether it can be done through the Congress versus the court system. But let me tell you, you're not the only one thinking about that right now. Right now, this is an active conversation taking place amongst the Second Amendment caucus of the United States, the Congress, both senators and United States representatives. And as you well know, that Congressman Hudson sponsored and introduced H.R. 38, which it's called the Federal Reciprocity Act on related to concealed carry of firearms. It's actually more of a federal recognition act that would require all states to recognize the concealed weapons permits that are duly issued by all of the states, just like a driver's license. And for those states that are constitutional carry states, where they don't issue CCWs, where the state says, you don't need a CCW, the Second Amendment is your CCW, as long as you don't break the law, as Mark pointed out, it's lawful for you to carry. That bill says that those residents from those 14 states now, and there are going to be multiple states that are this year going to propose constitutional carry acts for their various states, all they will have to do is show a driver's license that they are a resident of a constitutional carry state, and they will not be able to be prevented from carrying a concealed firearm in any state of the union. So the conversation is taking place. That's a very serious thought, and I'm going to pass it over to Mark because he's got a comment here.
I want everybody to think about this. State sovereignty is a two-edged sword. We got to be careful with this, and we got to make sure this is done right. If you say now, I want the federal government to be able to intervene every time a state does something that I don't want it to do, then you're going to be saying that it's okay for the federal government to intervene anytime it wants to. Now, in a state that has liberty, it has the sovereignty to interpose between the federal government and you, and that's what we were talking about with the sheriff. The sheriff does not have the jurisdiction to stop the state from doing something, but the sheriff might have the jurisdiction to stop the federal government, or at least he can't be compelled to enforce those laws. So we have to treat state sovereignty very carefully, because what we intend to do is we intend to buck the feds with regard to returning federally managed lands to state control. We intend to buck the feds to reclaim our water rights so that they can't be shipped out of state at the loss of the people in the state of Jefferson. State sovereignty is very, very important, and we want to be real careful to preserve that. We simply live in a state that uses its sovereignty to bludgeon its own people to death. Now that we need to fix, but we want to be real careful about how we treat state sovereignty with regard to the federal government, and don't open a door you can't close.
Okay.
Okay, well.
So we're going to have some announcements, but before we do that, I think there are some groups and people we need to thank. And first off, that is all of you, because you're the educated community. I'm so honored and proud to be a part of this community. Right? Yeah, thank you. I mean, I'm so proud. Also, we want to thank the California State Militia, and more importantly, Cottonwood and Woody Clendenin, our favorite barber. This is, I think, this is the second, well, they've been doing these forever, but this is growing and growing and growing as we're getting the word out. And then also we want to thank the State of Jefferson movement and our folks who are fighting for that. Yeah. And then these guys who we obviously can see are supporting us and doing their best and fighting for us. And so we want to thank them very much. Thank you, guys. Okay, so I want to summarize a little bit. I am actually fighting getting a little teary. If we could all just kind of sit down and stay here for a second. You know, I got to sit in this position where I get to see an entire room and community, including the people on the panel, who all care about the right things. And so it occurred to me that as we're sitting here and we're going to go back to our regular lives, I'm not very good with this mic, we have a choice to be citizens or civilians. We have a choice to continue to work together. In other words, are we going to be citizens and have some skin in the game, and are we going to fight for what's right? Are we going to support the organizations and the people who are out there fighting for us? Or are we going to support the state of Jefferson, the militia, and our elected officials and appointed officials? Are we going to help them? Are we going to come together? Or are we just going to go home? We're going to help. Yeah. Yeah. So I do want to let you, we're going to have somebody come up here in a moment and tell you how you can help the state of Jefferson. I think before you leave, know that there will be more of these as we're trying to all work together, but also try to find the people or the groups here that you think you can support or help or you want to get involved with. You know, someone said it before, if we're hanging alone, we're hanging alone. We need to do this together. I do want to have Wynn from the state of Jefferson come up. I think if there's anything we've noticed that there's an expensive fight going on when I'm almost glazing over as I'm listening to Mark explain all the hoops they're having to jump through, and they do have a nonprofit that we can support so that they can help do that fight. So Wynn's going to tell us about that.
Thank you, Joe. What I'd like for you to do, if you haven't picked up these brochures, they're trifold brochures explaining Jefferson, what's going on with Jefferson, over at that table in the corner. See Jan? On the back side of this brochure, it gives you an address where you can mail checks, money orders, cash, whatever you want to send to us. And gold and silver, we've actually had silver given to us. So, and we will take it. And so what we're doing is we're gathering money to fight the court costs, to be able to pay the attorneys to fight for the court for our liberty. As Mark has eloquently pointed out throughout the day, this is what we're doing. That's the only reason we're in line with this, is the money for the court cost. That's it. That's what it's for, point blank. So what we need to do is we need to get as much as we can together, because fighting for our liberty and paying for it is not going to be cheap. So if you've got skin in the game by either being a Shasta County resident, Tehama County resident, or a resident of California in any way, you own it. So your responsibility now is to write a check and mail it to P.O. Box 751, Palisadro 96073. Or I'll be back in the corner and I will take cash and checks. And just know that the money that you give is for a true donation. We're a 501c4. We're not a 501c3. As a C3, you can write it off. C4, you cannot. And as a C4, we don't have to tell the feds who you are. As a C3, we would have to tell the feds who you are. It's none of their damn business. So guess what? We're a C4, and we're going to keep it that way. That is you too, not just me. Okay, so please see us after this. We'll be over in the corner. I'll be accepting cash and checks, and thank you very much. You can mail them in. We need minimum $51 per person, 51st state. No, no, we need $1 million to fight this court cost, for this court cost. And we're about almost, we're a ways there, but we're not anywhere near the $1 million. And it's going to go quick. And the thing is it isn't just for the attorneys. It's all for the hard costs that the attorneys have to pay for in order to get our court case before the court. So it's not just them making $1 million, it's them paying for all the paperwork and then the legal fees that they have to pay out of their firms to make this happen. So the thing is, they're not going to be making a boatload of money off of us. So if you can, and if you have a business you want to do this with, great. Privately, great. Challenge everybody you know to do the same thing. You can go out our website. On the front of this, it says soj51.net. As soon as you pull that screen up, right there in front of you, it tells you exactly where to mail it to. Or if you want to go to do it through a PayPal account, click on the top right-hand corner. It says Pay Here. Click on PayPal, set up an account, and you can do it automatically. Have it done out of your account whenever you want, for any amount you want. So I just want to thank you very much and support Jefferson. Thanks.
I don't know about you guys, but before I came in here, I felt like I didn't have choices. I do feel like it's an uphill battle, and I think you guys definitely let us know it's an uphill battle, and you guys are fighting. But we do have choices, and we don't have to do nothing. We can work together. We can support our officials and our lobbyist groups that are working for us. We can support the organizations. We can join the fight. And I think that's what I got from this personally, and I hope that you guys saw something similar. I do want to say a couple other things just real quick. Thank you all for listening to me babble. I'm not near as eloquent or as important as these guys up here. There is a radio show tomorrow, Sovereign Minds, and that's from 9 to 12, KCNR 1460, which, by the way, I have a radio show there, too. And that's Sundays, 9 to 12, every Sunday, right? And then there is the Jefferson State of Mine, and that's M-I-N-E, that you can listen, and that's from 8 to 9 on KCNR 1460 from 9 to noon. Wait, that one's 8 to 9, and Sovereign Minds is 9 to 12.
And it streams live, so you can get it on your computer, because a lot of times folks in Cottonwood and Anderson can't get the radio, but you can get it on 1460 kcnr.com, okay? Also, you guys, on the 23rd of January at the Eagle Nest Church on Bocelli Lane, where we have our Patriot meeting, Sam Paredes will be there, and he will be the featured speaker, and he will be talking about these gun laws and other stuff, and I encourage you all to come. Sam is, as you have seen, is extremely knowledgeable about everything. So that would be January 23rd, 6 p.m. at the Eagle's Nest Church on Bocelli Lane. We also have a Facebook page. I've
Everybody
been
has a
informed by my
Facebook
wife.
page.
We have a Facebook page.
Everybody has a Facebook page.
Reading Patriots.
So if I'm not forgetting anything, I think the last thing I'd like to leave you guys with is let's all get in the fight. Let's just get in the fight. It's our choice, fight or not. Get in the fight legally through the ways we can support, with the people we can support. Let's just get in the fight. Okay, so did I forget anything? Did I forget anything? Are we done?
All right,
We're done. Thank you.
As you exit, would you please try and help us out by stacking your chairs 6 high? 6 high, stack your chairs, please.